So after a disagreement with a reasonably popular fitness influencer online, I've decided to come here and make this video breaking down why running and walking don't burn the same amount of calories over the same distance. So right here we have the two equations provided by ACSM. These equations have been tested ad nauseum, and they prove in both indirect and direct calorimetry to be pretty accurate in the real world. So in order to calculate VO2, we got your walk formula right here. You got 0.1 times your speed times your grade. This is your vertical component. And then plus 3.5, which this 3.5 is the rest component. So you have horizontal, basically speed, you have your grade, and then you have resting equivalent of 1 met, which is about 3.5 milliliters per kg per minute. As you can see, the VO2 calculation for the running component, the speed calculation is double. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, oh, well, it takes you longer to walk something than it does to run something. Well, that's all going to be accounted for once you start plugging numbers in here. This component is never really going to offset. It's never going to be equal over the same distance once you start plugging in numbers. So here's the example I used. We got a 100 kilogram man running a 5K. The runner is going to be going 5 miles an hour. The walker is going to be going 2.5 miles per hour. And the whole reason I use these two numbers is if you do math, you realize that the equation, well, this one's multiplied by double what that one is. So surely if the speed is double, it's going to offset that component. I'm going to show you why it doesn't. So in order to calculate it, you have to calculate your speed in meters per minute, which 2.5 mile per hour pace, 67 meters per minute, plus your vertical component. This is at a 0 grade, just for ease sake. And then plus your rest component gives you an average VO2 of 10.2. And then once you come down here to the run, you have your 0.2 times your 134, which is double speed, plus the 0, plus 3.5, and you get a VO2 of about 30.3. And I know you're wondering where the time component is. Well, that's how you get from VO2 to calorie expenditure. You have your minutes component in here. So once you plug everything in, 10.2 times 100 kgs, milliliters is your unknown. 1 liter of oxygen spent is approximately 5 calories. And then you got 74.6 minutes for the walker. You have the new VO2 for the runner, 100 kgs again, your missing milliliters component, and then you have half the time because you're running double speed. Once you calculate all that out, convert milliliters to liters, the walker expends about 76.1 liters of oxygen, which equates to about 380 calories. And then you have the runner, who's going to expend 113 liters of oxygen, approximately 565 calories. Now this is where the misconception comes in. So if you observe from the first equation, your walker, the vertical component is actually calculated at half of what the vertical component on a runner is. You're multiplying by 0.9 here, 1.8 here. So I know people say, well, your heart rate's elevated for a longer period of time when you're walking versus a higher heart rate for a shorter period of time running. That is not the issue when it comes to this, as far as what definitionally is a run versus a walk. When you're running, both feet are leaving the ground 2-3 inches at any given point. That compounded over X distance ends up being a lot of time where you are having to push your body off of the ground. That's where the additional energy expenditure is. And not a lot of people online say that. So it is a misconception, but it's not a misconception for the reason people believe. So that obviously is a pretty decent expenditure increase over the course of a relatively short distance, being a 5K. And just to highlight what I was talking about with that vertical component, it's actually shown even further once you start adding a grade. So because running innately has that vertical component, walking is actually calculated at twice the rate that running is once you start adding a grade. So now I've added in a 5% grade on this, but you're going to see with how infinitesimal this number becomes, it's never going to fully offset that, but your energy expenditure walking will increase slightly quicker as you increase the grade, because that vertical component is being eaten up slightly by the run. So go through the math again, calculate the grade. So you got your the new component is the 1.8 times your 5% grade. That gives you 0.9 that you're adding to this calculation. And then you go down here and you see, well, the vertical component on the run is actually half. But then once again, you go through all the math, you calculate it out. The walking energy expenditure did increase more on a percentage basis than the running component, but your run, you're still expending significantly more calories, because once again, you are having to push your entire body, which can be exponential energy expenditure depending on your weight. 100 kg is not a light person, but you are having to lift 100 kilograms off the ground 3,000 times over the course of a mile. It ends up being quite significant. And this reason is why when you see people running or walking at the gym, people that are walking tend to put the treadmill at an incline, because like I said, it does bring that differential a little closer, but you're never going to burn the same amount of calories doing a true run, maybe a jog where both feet aren't leaving the ground. But if you're doing what is considered a true run, and I know 5 miles per hour is a relatively slow run, the math just doesn't pan out. And there's dozens of studies that reinforce ACSM's calculations on this. Of course, everyone's a little different. There is some variability, but time and time again, this has been shown to be true.